Ever wondered what it would be like to wake up one day and find yourself transformed into something completely different? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? A drastic, unexpected change, flipping your world upside down. Suddenly, everything you once knew, everything familiar, becomes strange and alien. Today, let's dive into a world where such a transformation takes place. We'll be exploring the realm of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, a tale that brings this startling concept to life. Kafka, with his surreal and unique storytelling, introduces us to a reality where the impossible becomes the everyday. It's a story that pushes the boundaries of our imagination, forcing us to confront the unsettling and often terrifying aspects of change. So, buckle up as we delve into a narrative that's as bizarre as it is thought-provoking. What if you woke up one day to find yourself as a monstrous insect? Well, that's exactly what happens to Gregor Samsa in Kafka's The Metamorphosis. Imagine waking up one day and finding yourself transformed into a gigantic insect. This is the startling reality that greets our protagonist, Gregor Samsa, in the opening scene of Franz Kafka's novella, The Metamorphosis. In Chapter 1, we dive headfirst into the surreal and often grotesque world of Gregor's transformation. Gregor wakes up to find himself changed into a monstrous vermin. He doesn't panic or scream, but rather tries to rationalize this inexplicable transformation. His thoughts are still human, filled with mundane concerns of everyday life, like getting to work on time, despite his grotesque physical form. As Gregor struggles to move his new unwieldy body, we get a sense of his isolation. He's physically trapped in his room, but more than that, he's trapped in a body that is completely alien to him. It's a powerful metaphor for the alienation that many people feel in their daily lives. Then we have his family's reaction, a mix of horror, disbelief, and fear. They don't see Gregor, their son and brother. They see a monstrous creature, a vermin. This reaction underscores the theme of dehumanization in the story. As the day progresses, Gregor's transformation becomes a monstrous reality that his family must confront. At the same time, we see Gregor grappling with the loss of his job. As a traveling salesman, Gregor's role was to provide for his family. Now, as an insect, he's unable to fulfill this role. His job loss further emphasizes his isolation and the estrangement from his previous life. By the end of Chapter 1, we see Gregor struggling to adapt to his new form and the alienation beginning to set in. He's not just an insect physically, he's becoming an outsider in his own home, a stranger to his family. This chapter sets the stage for the deepening divide between Gregor and his family, a divide that will only grow as the story progresses. By the end of Chapter 1, we see Gregor struggling to adapt to his new form and the alienation beginning to set in. Gregor's metamorphosis continues, and so does his isolation. As we delve into Chapter 2 of Kafka's The Metamorphosis, we witness the Samsa family's struggle to adjust to their new reality. The once familiar has now become alien, and the household is steeped in unease. Gregor's family, initially in a state of shock and denial, begin to accept the inexplicable transformation that has occurred. Their efforts to adapt are palpable as they try to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Gregor's sister, Greta, steps up to take care of him, feeding him and cleaning his room, a task she undertakes with a mix of fear, revulsion, and sympathy. The parents, on the other hand, remain distant, unable to confront the reality of their son's condition. As the days pass, Gregor's human attributes start to fade. His tastes change. He now prefers rotten food over fresh. His ability to understand human language begins to wane, and he finds comfort in crawling on the walls and ceiling of his room, fully embracing his insect form. The bedroom, once a symbol of his human life, now resembles a lair for the monstrous vermin he has become. Meanwhile, Gregor's isolation grows. His family keeps him locked in his room, hidden from the outside world. The sound of his voice, now a chilling insect-like hiss, frightens them. His presence is a constant reminder of the grotesque transformation that has turned their lives upside down. Despite his physical metamorphosis, Gregor's emotional and psychological connection to his family persists. He yearns for their affection, their acceptance, but is met with fear and loathing. The gap between Gregor and his family widens, and he becomes increasingly alienated. This chapter is a stark portrayal of rejection and isolation, as Gregor, despite his monstrous form, retains his human consciousness and emotional needs. His struggle to reconcile his human mind with his insect body underscores the tragic irony of his predicament. In Chapter 2, we see Gregor's humanity fading away as he becomes more and more accustomed to his insect body. As the story progresses, Gregor's existence becomes more and more unbearable. Chapter 3 of The Metamorphosis dives deeper into Gregor's alienation and disconnection from his human past. The transformation of Gregor from a responsible son and worker into a monstrous insect has now gradually eroded his ties to the human world. Gregor's family, initially shocked and horrified, now begin to show signs of disdain and neglect. They stop seeing him as a member of the family, but rather as an unwanted burden. His sister, Greta, who was initially sympathetic, grows cold and resentful. She stops feeding him with the same care and frequency as before, and even his room, which was once a symbol of his humanity, is stripped bare, further depriving him of his human comforts. Gregor's isolation grows, and he retreats into himself, spending his days and nights hidden under the sofa in his room, away from the prying, disgusted eyes of his family. He barely eats, his strength wanes, and his health deteriorates. The family's maid discovers Gregor's state one day, and the family is faced with the reality of his impending death. When the family finally resolves to get rid of him, Gregor, weakened and ill, crawls back to his room one last time. He thinks of his family with love and understanding despite their rejection of him. This intense longing for his family and his lost human life pushes Gregor to his death. He passes away alone in the darkness of his room, unloved and unmourned. Gregor's death brings a peculiar sense of relief to his family. They feel freed from the burden he had become, and for the first time in a long time, they start to think about their future without him. In the end, Gregor's transformation leads him to an unfortunate demise, a tragic end to a tragic life. The third chapter of The Metamorphosis paints a grim picture of alienation, rejection, and the loss of humanity, leaving us to ponder the harsh realities of life and transformation. The Metamorphosis is not just a story about a man turning into an insect. It's a profound exploration of human nature, our fears, and our capacity for change. It's a tale that uses the surreal to reflect upon the very real. At its core, The Metamorphosis grapples with the concept of transformation, but not just the physical kind. Yes, Gregor Samsa wakes up one day to find himself transformed into a monstrous insect. But this physical change is just a metaphor. His metamorphosis is a reflection of the internal changes we all experience throughout our lives, the shifts in our roles, our identities, our relationships. It asks us to consider, how do we react to change, and how does change affect our perception of ourselves and others? The Metamorphosis is also a poignant commentary on alienation. Gregor, once the breadwinner of the family, is now seen as a burden, an outcast, a vermin. His transformation is a physical manifestation of the emotional alienation that many feel in a society that values productivity over humanity. It's a critique on how quickly we can be discarded when we no longer serve a purpose, when we're no longer useful. This brings us to dehumanization, another key theme of the story. As Gregor becomes more insect-like, his family's treatment of him becomes increasingly inhumane. They're repulsed by him, they're afraid of him, they wish he was gone. It's an unsettling reminder of how easily we can dehumanize those who are different, those who don't fit into our preconceived notions of normality. The Metamorphosis is more than a bizarre tale of transformation. It's a critique of modern society, a mirror held up to our own attitudes towards change, alienation, and dehumanization. It forces us to question our values, our relationships, and the very nature of our humanity. In the end, Kafka's The Metamorphosis serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities of change and the consequences of not being able to adapt. It's a story that continues to resonate, continues to challenge, continues to reflect our ever-changing world. So, what can we take away from Kafka's The Metamorphosis? Well, we've journeyed through the unnerving transformation of Gregor Samsa from a man into an insect, witnessing his struggle with this new grotesque form and the isolation it brings. We've seen his family's reactions, their initial horror shifting into acceptance and finally, abandonment, reflecting on humanity's capacity for adaptability, but also its potential for cruelty. We've delved into the themes of alienation, guilt, and identity, taking a hard look at how societal pressures and expectations can shape our lives and self-perceptions. We've seen how Kafka uses absurdity and surrealism to explore these profound issues, making The Metamorphosis not just a bizarre tale, but a profound commentary on the human condition. The Metamorphosis is a haunting tale of transformation and the stark realities it can bring, a story that continues to resonate in our rapidly changing world. Do like, share, and subscribe.